Mistakes and failures are a huge part of life, but you don't have to let it define you. Using those failures as fuel to change propels you to take action and transform your life. Join me, Mark Hugentobler, as I interview people who have experienced the rock bottom of the criminal justice system and see how they turn their failures into success, stories that will motivate you and change your life. Destiny Garcia grew up in a life of drugs and violence. Not knowing anything different, she thought abuse, violence, and drugs were normal. At 16, she started into the drug life herself and remained that way for the majority of her life. She tells her heart-wrenching story of trying to raise her kids in that world. She spent 7 years as a prisoner to her husband before breaking free and ending up on the streets, living a life of constant drug use, theft, and depravity. Listen in as she comes to herself and, thanks to a program called Project Rio Grand, finally gets the help she needs to get out of that life. Her tale brings her through rehab, thanks to the support of her son, who never gave up on her, and finally to work in the county mayor's office. Now the CEO of Clean Slate, Utah, she is showing others the way out of the dysfunction and into true normal life. Buckle up as she tells her emotional story of survival and redemption. As we start our podcast today, we want to take a minute and thank our sponsors. First, the Other Side Academy, a therapeutic community in Salt Lake City, Utah, helping people that have been at the rock bottom of the criminal justice world become great members of society. Their success saves the state of Utah millions of dollars every year. Peaceful Prisons Project, a national nonprofit that helps formerly incarcerated reconnect with society in healthy ways. My Story Matters and Captain Your Story, an amazing program that, as described by its founder, Amy Chandler, helps all humans live a life of intention and purpose, helping them tackle the problems of everyday life. If you'd like to find out more about any of our sponsors, go to allmyfriendsarefelons.com and click on the link. Well, Destiny, we're sure excited to have you on the show. Manny's told me a lot about you, and I've heard a lot about you from a lot of different angles. We've visited on the phone, and you've got a great story. I think it's something that our listeners are really going to enjoy. So to get started, if you just start at the beginning, your young life, how you grew up, your family situation, and kind of go from there.
Thanks for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here. I grew up in a family where violence and drug use was really normalized. It still is normalized in my family. I grew up where my dad was an abuser. He was the biggest abuser that I've ever known. And so you fast forward that into my story and why I ended up in what I ended up in. Violence and drug use was normal. And so I found myself in my normal for the first part of my life, the first few decades of my life anyways.
Well, tell us a little about what that was like.
Yeah. It was, to me, it was normal, but I remember being a child and being scared all the time. I remember like hearing the fights in the background. I remember going to the hospital because there were injuries. I also was like the oldest girl in my family. So I had like 3 younger sisters, and I always tried to like make it seem okay because it's what was normal for us. Luckily, my dad changed his ways throughout our life and didn't end up passing away like that. He ended up passing away a very Christian man. He ended up changing his abusive ways, which was wonderful for our family. But the first little part was really hard.
Yeah. Was
Looking
there gun
back,
violence?
it was hard, but when I was in it, it was totally normal. I thought everybody's family was like this.
And that's the bizarre thing about these situations is it was for you normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me and many people to even imagine how that could be normal. And we're critical, thinking, why would you allow this, or why would you think the way you think? But it's all you know.
It was so normal to me that I treated my siblings the same way that I saw that was around me. Like I was a bully for most of my life with my siblings, especially one of my younger sisters that lived with me. I treated her like crap for a lot of years because that's what I knew. It's the only way I knew. And so I've caused trauma to her, and she's still getting over that to this day because I was so bad to her. I was bad to my own children for a long time. enacting those same behaviors because it's what I knew. I
Yeah.
didn't know any other way.
And so you grew up in Salt Lake City,
And Magna.
in
I'm
Magna.
a Magna girl through and through.
So elementary school, you went to school, I assume, and
Yep. So,
what was that like? Did you get along with
uh,
your teachers? Did you have a good experience, or was it all ugly?
like people ask me these types of questions all the time, and I don't have my memories are a lot different than what my sister's memories are. Like I remember going to school, but I don't remember the ins and outs of it. I think that could be because of a lot of the drug use, a lot of the abuse, a lot of the trauma I went through. I don't remember having problems in school and in elementary school at all. Um, Not even really in junior high school. It was high school where I started to not go to school and was more into boys and things of that nature. I started using drugs in high school. Um, but before that, my memory is really foggy. I remember like going to my dad's on the weekends. My mom would have us on the weekdays, and I remember like my dad was in active addiction, and my dad was known for dumpster diving, and so to me it was normal to drive through the avenues on trash day, and my dad always said that other people's trash are other people's treasures, and so we would bring home all kinds of trash all the time.
And so
When
you
my
go
dad
up
would,
on the avenues on the east side too, I guess.
yeah, yeah, like that's when my dad was
Really?
really active in addiction. I remember like taking the back roads from Magna to Salt Lake where my dad lived because he thought people was following him. Um
So he had some paranoia issues
yeah, oh yeah. So
that
those are
accompanied the
my
drugs.
young memories is going to my dad's on the weekends, and it was the drug lifestyle.
Yeah, dumpster diving. So was your
Dumpster
mom?
diving.
Did your mom have addiction issues? Was
My
how was
mom did
she?
have addiction issues early on, and I remember my mom using, and I remember, some of my aunts and stuff using with my mom, but my mom was always this really strong woman. She always had a full time job. She was always working. I knew that she drank and partied, and I think it was mostly when we were at my dad's house. Um, and I don't really remember like a moment in her life where it was like, okay, I'm done. I just remember it not being around anymore.
And do you
I
remember
think
about when
most,
that was, Destiny?
I want to say it was probably, I was probably between 16 and 18 years old.
So you were a little bit older.
Yeah.
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 So did your dad have an apartment? Did you Where did you stay when you went to your dad's?
My dad, we stayed at a lot of different places. My dad used to live with my grandma. And I remember like him and my brother trying to learn how to cook meth in the kitchen while we were playing in the front room. Then my dad, he lived in another trailer in Murray. In this trailer, like the doors barely closed, the windows were boarded up. It was really unsanitary for us. And then after that, when he started to change his ways a little bit, him and my stepmom got a house in Kearns, and they lived in that house all the way up until about 4 years ago. When he started to change
Oh,
his life, he started to go to counseling. He got some domestic violence charges, which required him to do these certain things. Um, but even though my dad was really heavy into the drugs, he was a truck driver and he worked all the time. And so he would go out on trucks and then he'd come home and then chaos would be there. But he also always worked as well.
so he was functional.
Yeah.
Both your mom
Well,
and dad were functional in that way.
yeah, to a point. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they
yeah.
worked and
Able to work. I don't,
yep.
you refer to a functional alcoholic, someone who can drink and can still go out
Yeah.
and do things in a normal that the real normal people,
Yeah.
would consider. Yeah.
Yeah, they
So
both always worked. And so we both like, that was normal for us for them to go to. So I thought it was a normal family. Like my parents went to work just like everybody else's parents,
right.
you know?
Did you ever not want to go with your dad?
My dad never hurt us in any type of way other than having the abuse and the drugs around us. Like he was never violent to us. But there are lots of times that I remember like calling my mom and wanting my mom to come and pick up me and my sister because my dad and my stepmom would be fighting so bad. And so that's what I remember is not ever not wanting to go, but always wanting to come home early because of the fighting was so bad.
Yeah. And that would be that would be terrible. That would be
Yeah,
hard.
he was angry. He was angry and very violent for a long
Yeah.
time.
So you go to school. You elementary school. You don't remember too much. Even middle school. Somewhere along the way, you decide to start using, or you get in a situation that gets you using. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
So my mom used to work nights, so she worked 7 at night until 7 in the morning, and then she would sleep while we were at school. When we got home from school, dinner would be get done, and she would go to work. And so, since my mom worked all night long, I had an older brother that was 5 years older than me that just recently got married and moved out. So it was just me and my younger sister of 2 years. And so we ended up being the popular girls in high school, and we'd party at my house all night long. We'd invite everybody over, and it first started with like playing the Sega Genesis. I don't know if you remember the Sega Genesis, but we would
Oh
play the
yeah,
Sega Genesis, and we'd smoke weed, or we would go get weed from my mom's room because she always smoked weed, and that's how we started smoking weed. And it ended up being like full blown parties almost every single weekend at my house, which brought in a lot of drug use, which brought in a lot of gang activity. Um, I remember one time my mom was coming home in the middle of the night on a break, and came to drive home, but the whole her street and the whole next street was covered with cars. So she
because
went
they
to
were
the
all at your house.
they were she went to the police station and got the police officers, and they came and came in the house, and I remember like it was in the winter time, and all of our friends were throwing guns out the back window, off the porches, because we were partying with a bunch of gangsters. And my mom came in, dumping out all the alcohol. Nobody was arrested. Nobody got in trouble. The cops just made everybody leave. But that just gives you the idea of what our high school parties were like at my house.
And it was mostly the weekends, so you weren't
Most,
really
yeah.
doing it on the weekdays.
Well, no, it was on the
And
weekdays too. So my mom worked 3 days during the week and then every other weekend. And so even during the
okay,
week, like I remember staying up and doing cocaine all and drinking all night long, and then pretending like we were asleep right before my mom got home, got up to go to school. And then I would also do drugs at school too. And then the
so
next night we would party all night. So I was staying up for days at a time in high school.
you were really addicted. You weren't. This wasn't just a party scene. This was a real
I thought
addicted.
it was a party scene. I thought it was fun and partying, and I didn't feel addicted. I was having fun, you know.
Yeah,
I didn't feel like I needed it, but I was a young girl, and I'm sure I was fully addicted to it.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's clearly you were.
yeah,
So did you? You're kind of starting to get involved with the gang life.
yeah,
Maybe I don't know if you ever became a gang member, but obviously you were there and on the fringe.
yeah.
Did you make it? Did you make it through high school?
You know, I went all the way through high school, even till the very last day, but I never graduated. I went to high school to be around the people and to be around my friends and to slough and go get high, but I didn't graduate. I ended up
So how did
graduating 2 years later after I had my first child, and I ended up going back and getting my high school diploma.
at night school?
And it was at Horizonte. It was night school, and then you take
Right.
packets
Okay.
home. Yeah, and I ended up
Yeah.
getting a high
Yeah.
school diploma that way.
Yeah. So did your school? Were you disciplined? Did your teachers know you were using? Did you have trouble? Did you have fights or anything at school that caused you to get disciplined? And or did you
No,
just
no, I
not?
just really
Did you
didn't
just
go to
fail the
school.
classes and
I just filled the classes and went in for lunch, the lunch periods, and just really didn't go to school very much in my senior year. It was really the senior year that really went downhill.
yeah, because of the heavy drug use?
Yeah, the heavy drug use, absolutely.
So after high school, you don't graduate. Then what?
You know, I end up finding myself in my what's normal to me. I end up finding myself with men that are abusive. I have my first son at the age of 19. And his dad and I were never really together. We were just having some fun, and here comes my son. So we were never really in a relationship. Now I lived with my mom for the next 2 years after that before I was able to get Section 8 housing, get public assistance with housing. I moved
Was that
out.
out? Was that out in where?
I lived with my mom in Magna, and then I moved into West Jordan, an apartment in West Jordan, once I
And
got
that's
my
where the
house.
Section 8 was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Moved into an apartment in in West Jordan. And then I was working at a company called Diamond Glass. I worked there from 99 until about 2007. And that is where I met my daughter's dad. And then I get pregnant with my daughter, who was born in 2002. So I had my son in 99, my daughter in 2002. They're about 3 years apart. Um, and I'm still in housing. I'm still working. I'm still getting like Medicaid and food stamps. And my daughter's dad was very much a mama's boy. We were in a relationship, and he never spent the night at my house for the whole 4 years we were together. He always had to be home by a curfew. Even when I had my daughter in the hospital, he couldn't spend the night because his family was that strict.
Because his
We
mom
ended
just
up,
said you're coming home, huh?
yeah, yeah,
Was
it was
he
crazy.
using?
He wasn't using. I mean, we smoked a lot of weed together and we drank together, uh, but his abuse was more like a financial abuse. Like we would work and he lived with me, so I get out of the hospital and he ends up spending the night, and his mom's like, "Screw this, take all your stuff, get out." So she kicks him out. He comes to my house. That was because he didn't come home by curfew. Um, and he's there. We lived together for about 6 months to a year. But during that time, all the money that he was making at his job went all back to his mom. And so things just didn't end up working out. Him and I, we only got in a fist fight one time. My nose was broken that one time. And it was during a huge, ugly custody battle. So after we split up, I go through this huge custody battle. Um, for about 4 or 5 years. It was a long custody battle, but during that time, I'm getting high and going to the bars and meeting guys, and I'm still working. But on the weekend, I'm out partying it up.
So
Um,
are you using during the week too?
I'm
Or you
using a
just,
little bit during the week, but not very much. It's mostly like from Friday when I get off work all the way until Sunday night. My kids
yeah.
would be at my mom's house, and I would be having huge parties at my house.
Wow.
I just like to have huge parties everywhere I went back then.
Well, it sounded like that started when you were young.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You were bit of an entertainer in that regard.
Yeah,
So
and so I find myself in like after that relationship, I find myself going after from one abusive man to the next abusive man. It's almost like my brain knew if they weren't acting out, we weren't fighting, and he wasn't hitting me, then he didn't love me. If he didn't love me enough to get angry and fight with me, then he didn't love me because that's what I grew up in. That's what I've known. And so I end up
that's
in
amazing.
this relationship. My daughter's 2 years old. My son's about 5, and I get in this relationship, and I'm in this relationship for about 7 years. And it was a very toxic, very abusive relationship, abusive all the way around. I wasn't allowed
Physical,
to
emotional.
physical, emotional, financial. He moved in with me on my Section 8 housing, and then a year later, I come home from work, and he's like, "You're quitting your job." I got us a different house. We're not staying on housing. So I came to be 100% dependent on this man. 100% dependent.
Did he
Um,
do that on purpose
oh, I'm sure he did that on purpose.
so he could
Absolutely.
control you?
Yeah, I remember I didn't even want to go sign the lease on the new house. And when I went to sign the lease the next day, I had stitches in my lip and my nose was broke because we had gotten in such a big fight the night before because I didn't want to move. I didn't want to leave my housing. I was afraid to move into a new house with him. When he lived with me, I had a little bit of control. It was my place. It was my place. It was my housing. Even though he shouldn't have been living there, it was mine. And I didn't want to give all that up. Um, I ended up giving it all up. I really didn't have a choice at that time. I was too scared. I'd already been abused for a year at that point. And I signed those paperworks with stitches in my lip and a broken
And a
nose
broken
because
nose.
we had fought so bad the day before. And that relationship was numerous. I want to say my nose was broke probably 7 or 8 times throughout that
Oh my
7 year
goodness.
relationship. Um, my eyes were fractured all the time. I was thrown down the stairs. I was like, if I would try to leave in my car, he would follow me, hit me with the car, hit the other car with the car. I remember like running so many different times from him, and then somehow ended up right back the very next day. Like I remember one time, like we were fighting so bad, and my daughter was with her dad, and my son was probably seventh grade, maybe sixth grade, sixth or seventh grade. And I remember running out of my house with my son, and there was a bus stop right across the street. And me and my son ran to the bus stop, and the bus driver seen me, and he stopped and he let us get in. And he's like, I don't want any money. Just, I can see what's going on. And we rode the bus around that area like 3 or 4 times before I was able to call my mom, get picked up, and go to my mom's house. And so during this time, I'm going to the emergency rooms throughout the 7 years for legitimate injuries. Like, I was physically abused for all these legitimate injuries, and I was being prescribed pain pills. And I needed the pain pills. I was extremely hurt most of the time, healing or getting beat so bad to where I couldn't even use the bathroom, couldn't even wipe myself while I used the bathroom because my body was so sore all the time. That when I finally decided to leave, I was so addicted to pain pills because I was so used to taking them. But I was not only taking them just for my physical abuse, right? I was taking them because it helped me
run
get up
away
every day.
Emotionally.
It helped me clean the house every day. It helped me make sure I was cooking the food every day. It was my get up and go. And this man was so abusive to the point, if I made his eggs and the eggs ended up being brown at all, he would throw the eggs at me. I remember one time I went to McDonald's and I ordered our food for the family, and I got home and I didn't check the order, and they forgot his oatmeal, and he beat my butt so bad over that. It was so bad. It was so bad, and he made all the money that I didn't know how to leave. I couldn't even go to the grocery store and get cash back because I had to give the receipts in. I was 100% dependent on him.
So he had you in prison.
Oh, yeah.
He had you were in prison, emotionally, physically.
Yeah.
So
him and I did a lot of cocaine together. We did a lot of pills together. We were partying every weekend, had big parties at our house every weekend.
That's a continuation.
Yeah. And I remember when I was finally ready to leave and he had locked me out of the house. I pick up my kids from school. I'm with my mom, and we go to get whatever we can out of the house because I'm done. I'm ready to leave, and the doors are locked. And my son said, Mom, I knew this was going to happen one day. So I always leave my bedroom window open because I knew this was going to happen one day. And so he went through his bedroom window, unlocked the door so we can get all of our kids' stuff, fill the car up, and leave. I never went back after that. That was the last time.
And he never found you? He didn't come find you?
He found another girlfriend right away. I think he was married within 4 or 5 months right after that. And so I think that he found somebody else, and he didn't come after me that time. Every single other time before that, and I had left, I can't even tell you how many times. Every single time before that, he always found me.
He come and found you. You were at your mom's? Did you go back to your mom's? Is that where you were? Or?
I went back to my mom's. And my mom was amazing. She gave me this opportunity. She let me and my kids live there. She didn't make me pay rent. I enrolled in college, and I enrolled into criminal justice, youth services, and social work. It was like a certificate program at Everest College. And so I'm trying to change my life. I'm going to college for these things. And as I'm in college, I have taken so many pills throughout the day to function because that's what I became used to, that I'm falling asleep in class. And so I'm getting meth on the side and going to the bathroom during class to smoke meth in the bathroom so I can go back into the classroom and function with the cop teacher I had that was teaching the criminal justice class. I think he was a retired cop. I ended up starting to shoplift really heavily to afford the pills, afford the meth. I was still getting prescribed the pills, but I wasn't getting prescribed enough pills to keep me going. I was faking injuries at that point. And by this point, the doctors know me so well from all these injuries. And I almost get surgery on a fake knee injury to keep the pills. I didn't end up following through with the surgery. I ended up in this horrible car accident. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So I'm going through college. I'm doing all this good stuff. I can't function. I get arrested for shoplifting. And I'm in jail over Christmas and over the time of my very last class. So I never graduated college. So the whole time I'm in college, I'm getting a 4.0. I'm on the dean's list every single month. I have one class left. It's a computer class, and I failed because I'm in jail. Once I go into jail, I'm in jail over the Christmas break because I was shoplifting stuff for my kids.
What year was this, Destiny? Just curious.
Oh, this was. Oh, you're really testing my memory.
About
So my son was
2010.
in. Let's see. My son was in high school at this point. So maybe
So it
junior
might
high
have
going
been
into high school. So I'm going to say
2014,
2011, 2012,
2011.
2010,
And
11,
just
12.
did your mom know that you were using?
I think she suspected. I mean, she's no dummy.
Yeah.
She's lived this lifestyle. She suspected it, I think, but she never said anything to me.
She was just trying to
Once,
be supportive, trying to help
right?
you. Yeah.
Once, once I started to shoot up meth, and it was very obvious that I was shooting up meth. I was never one that really hid my addiction. I was one that's like, yeah, I'm slamming meth, and what? Like, this is what I'm doing. She kicked me out. She had me escorted out of her house. That same day, I had also freaked out on my son and beat the crap out of him. And my mom was like, enough is enough. So she had me kicked out of the house. She applied for a protective order against me. I couldn't go around my son. I mean, rightfully so. I was a
Yeah.
maniac.
She's
I
just
was a
trying to
maniac.
protect her
Yeah,
grandchild.
yeah.
And so this before you went to college, or was this after you
This
went
was
to jail?
after. This was after I failed college, and I get out of jail. I continue using. Start being around people all the time that are using. I was going downhill very steep. So
How
once
did you
she
pay?
kicked me out,
How
go
did you
ahead.
pay for all this? Because you weren't working, obviously.
Oh, I was
You didn't start
shoplifting.
work, so you were just stealing stuff. You weren't
I
selling
was
drugs or anything.
well, I was like selling pills to get meth or selling meth to get pills, but I wasn't like this big drug
Dealer,
dealer. I was
right?
dealing drugs to support my own habit. Like I
Yeah,
never made money off it. I was just trading one drug for the other drug or whatever one I needed most that day. Um,
and
I
living where? Because you're not living at your mom's.
Yeah, so I'm at my dad's a lot during this time. I'm also hanging out at motels downtown, hanging out with people that I met on the street. At this point, from hanging out with the people downtown, I start shooting methamphetamine, and then I'm just back and forth from my dad's house to downtown to motels. I end up meeting another guy, who was another very abusive guy. He was a heroin addict, and I shot up heroin for the first time, and I was in love. I was in love. It's all, I mean, I did meth and heroin every 2 hours on the dot, probably for the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
I end up being like this huge booster downtown, stealing all this stuff from department stores, trading it all for drugs. And that was my day to day life every single day. Get up, go downtown. But this guy that I was with,
For 5 years.
for 5 years, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So now go back to your question about the time. That was in 2012 was when I went crazy. I got sober in 2017, so that's about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. But this guy that I ended up being with, who was the heroin addict, who then I became a heroin addict very, very quickly. He was very abusive as well. He was in and out of prison for some very serious charges: attempted aggravated criminal homicide, attempted aggravated kidnapping. And with that being said, he held me in more of a prison than the other man did. Like I wasn't allowed to leave the bedroom. I wasn't The only thing I could do was go with him to shoplift, to get the stuff, to trade for drugs, to go back. And I remember like even as I'm shoplifting, he's freaking out in the store thinking that I'm doing something with some guy in a dressing room instead of like actually just shop. So it would bring cops in, and we're always running from the law because he we would act crazy in the stores, fighting, physically fighting sometimes. It was a super bad situation. He ended up trying to like drag me up some stairs in front of the neighbors by my hair, and I was with one of my friends. And so she ended up calling the cops on him. And because of that charge, he was violated and sent back to prison. While he was in prison, I was homeless downtown, living off of North Temple, still shoplifting every day, still shooting up every day. But I knew I didn't want to be down there anymore. I knew I didn't want to. I was getting to my end. Like I was tired of doing the same stuff. I was tired of being sick. I was tired of sleeping outside. I would sleep in the round elementary school slides because I felt safe when I slept in the slides at the elementary school because people who were walking by couldn't see me because I was in the round slide. Um, and I remember like sitting in the park and crying and shooting up and not wanting to, but being so sick I didn't have any other choice, but not knowing how to get the help that I needed. And throughout this whole 5 years, I'm being cycled in and out of jail. Get arrested for shoplifting, get released. Get arrested for shoplifting. The cops would even feel so bad for me because I was living out of my car that they would just let me go and give me a ticket. And since I only had retail theft, criminal trespass, and paraphernalia charges, I was never offered any type of drug treatment or any type of drug court program. I was a low level misdemeanor offense person that I was never offered any type of treatment. I'd be cycled in and out, in and out. And I would go into jail extremely sick, abscesses draining from 3 or 4 different parts of my body from shooting up. And nobody ever offered me help. I would eat a sandwich, take a nap, be in jail for a week or two, get out, do the same thing.
And so what was it like in jail when you were, I guess you didn't have did you have drugs in jail or did you?
No, there was no drugs in jail. I mean, I would trade commissary for like people's anxiety pills or sleeping pills or whatever, you know. But the last time I went to jail, I was arrested on Operation Rio Grand. And
tell us about that.
Operation Rio Grand was an operation that the government had put together to try to clean up downtown, the open air drug market downtown, where I would frequent a lot. And the idea was to arrest people, get them into treatment, clean up the area, and help the homeless population. In my case, I was arrested. When I was arrested on 14 warrants. And I remember the cop like running my name. And this time I didn't lie. I told him the truth. I was done. I was ready. And the cop told me like, if you're extremely sick, like I had syringes in my bras, I had knives in my pocket. I had dope on me. I didn't have any shoes on my feet. Like I was extremely, extremely homeless, extremely sick. And they told me, if you want to get some help right now, then you need to, when you get into jail, ask for a program. There is so much funding because of Operation Rio Grand that if you want to get help, you can get help. And so I tried to talk them into taking me to the Davis County Jail because I knew the Davis County Jail had better food and the cells were better. The people was better. You can order a hot plate once a week. I wanted to go to Davis County. I had open warrants out there. But they sent me to Salt Lake anyways. But I remember like trying to bargain with the police officer, like, just send me to Davis County. Like the food's better. I'm going to be in there a while anyways. But I ended up getting booked into Salt Lake County Jail and riding a kite to get into a program. So Operation Rio Grande started in August. I was arrested August 21st of 2017. And I remember like when you're in your addiction and you're out and about, you think you look good. Like I thought I looked good. So I was like,
but you were a meth heroin addict. So
with no teeth, I had no teeth at that time. Track marks all over me, 90 pounds soaking wet. But in my head, I thought I can walk up and down North Temple and go into stores and steal. And these cops are not going to stop me because I don't even look like I'm high. That wasn't the case. But I thought I would escape it, you know? I ended up getting arrested, going to jail. And, I get assessed to go to Odyssey House. And I remember when I was getting my drug assessment in jail, I thought, I could just give them an address and they'll let me out. And I thought about that for a minute. And I thought, no, I really need the help. Like I knew weeks before I got arrested that I needed help and I wanted help. I didn't know how to get the help. So I told them the truth that I was homeless. I didn't have anywhere safe to go. And I was sentenced to Odyssey House. And so while I'm in jail, my family is tenfold. They're all there. They're visiting me. My mom's giving me money on my commissary. I'm talking to my son on the phone, who is very angry and hates me at this point. Um,
Understandably.
yeah, and he's like, again, you're in jail again? Like what? Like, I'm not going to come visit you this time. Like, I don't want to go there. Um, and he hated me. I mean, he grew up, he was at my mom's house going to school with people who had their moms and dads around, and he had his grandparents, and his life was challenging because of me. And the things that he remembered of me was
Right.
violence and angry, and seeing all this abuse himself. Like, I was literally raising my kids the same way I was raised without actually realizing that's what I was doing, because it was so normal for me.
Well, it was it was normal for you.
Yeah, it was so
So
normal
did
for me.
quick sidelight. Did how are your kids?
Um,
Did
my son and I, you mean right now or before?
did they have a lot of struggles, or did they kind of come through thanks to your mom? And
Yeah, they don't struggle with drug addiction. They don't struggle with gangs. My son doesn't. My daughter is 22 right now, and I haven't talked to her since she was in elementary school. She's angry, and rightfully so. I chose drugs and this lifestyle for a long time, and
yeah,
so she knows I'm sober. She knows the things that I'm doing, but she's just not ready.
yeah.
So, not ready at all. So I go into
Well,
Odyssey House, and when I get released from jail, nobody tells my family that I'm going to Odyssey House. So they see on the jail roster that I'm out. They don't hear from me, and they're like, "Here we go again. Here we go again." She's probably out on the street, so they're driving around looking for me in the areas I frequent. They can't find me. And my brother used to volunteer at the homeless shelter downtown, and he knew some people that worked at Odyssey House, and he's like, "Can you tell me if my sister's in that program? Because we can't find her." And I remember when I got to Odyssey House, this is that moment for me. When I got to Odyssey House, and the employers pull me aside, and they're like, "You have to call your family. We can't tell them that you've been here, but they're calling every treatment center. They can't find you. They're worried about you, and we can't legally tell them that you're here. So call them." So I called, and my son answered, and he's like, "I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for not running and going to Odyssey House. I'm proud that you're there. I will be there every visiting day. I will bring you whatever you need. Just please don't leave." And that's what I needed to hear. So that was like the second day I was in Odyssey House. So that's what I needed to hear. That was everything for me. Because I'd been in jail for about a month at this time. My head isn't as foggy. I didn't run when I went to admissions. Like, I knew I wanted something different. And that was the moment that I knew that I wasn't going to leave. And I don't know if you've heard about the Odyssey House program, but it's a hard program. It's an extremely hard program. Um, but I stayed, and I stayed out of the drama. I stayed away from the boys, which was a huge thing because it's a co-ed program. And my family was there every visiting day. I didn't go without anything. They were there with laundry soap. They were there with a coat. They were there with clothes. They were there with whatever I needed. They were there. And even though my mom and I have always bumped heads, she'd come to visiting, and we'd argue the whole time, because I'd be like, "I'm doing so good," and she'd be like, "They need to keep you longer." Like, but I'm phasing up in the program. Like, I haven't got in trouble. I'm going to be getting out soon. And she's like, "No, they can't let you out. You're not. They need to keep you longer." Like, she was adamant that I needed to stay longer and longer and longer.
but she wasn't doing that because she didn't love you. She
No,
did
she
it
was doing
because she
that. Yeah,
did, and she saw for the first time hope
yeah.
that you
I,
could.
I see
Yeah.
that now. But then I'm like, geez, my mom doesn't even believe in me. She doesn't even believe I'm doing good. That's how I perceived it when I was in the
Right.
program. Right.
Right.
Um, so I transitioned from inpatient, and I'm also doing the drug court program at this time. And I transitioned into outpatient, into sober living. And I was the first one who was arrested on Operation Rio Grand who successfully completed inpatient treatment. So tons of people had been arrested. Nobody had successfully completed treatment yet at that point. And so I was the first one to use the Salt Lake County Sober Living Pilot voucher, Sober Living Pilot voucher. It was a pilot program Salt Lake County had put together during Operation Rio Grand that would give people 3 to 6 months of paid housing in a sober living community if you successfully completed treatment. And so I was able to use that voucher. I remember
And
sitting.
so you were what? How long did you finally stay in Odyssey?
I was in Odyssey for 4 months. I was in there I went in September. I was arrested August 21st, 2017. I went into Odyssey House September 8th, and I got out January 5th.
And then you went into sober living for 6 months?
Then I went into sober living. And while I'm in sober living, I'm still going to drug court every week. And the drug court lady, Noella Sudbury, she worked for the county mayor, and she would watch me in drug court. And I was like, why is this lady staring at me? Like, she was staring at me like the whole entire time. But during drug court, like, everybody who knows each other is all sitting together. They're all talking, and I'm just minding my business over here, just trying to do my program, not being involved in all the chaos. And she's watching me, and she's like, would you be willing to do a press conference talking about how Operation Rio Grand helped you, and talking about the treatment you received and the sober living voucher that you're using? And I'm like, no way.
This concludes part 1 of our interview with Destiny Garcia. Part 2 of this podcast will air on the next podcast drop. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating, a review, or a like, as it helps our show grow. Thank you so much.